Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, this is Orphan Last, aka Skylar Madison, and for today, someone near and dear to me paid me to draw a picture of Jesus. It's a grayscale image because I was given a really strong deadline. And because I was given such a strong deadline to finish the image the same day that I started it, I called in to work and explained that I have a commission that will pay me better than my current job. And since most of the work that we'd be doing for the day was just prep work, I didn't really feel like they really needed me for the day. Fortunately, the company that I work for fosters an environment of brotherhood, and they were nice enough to give me the day off so that I could just draw this image in one day. And it genuinely took me the whole day to draw this. It took me 13 hours. I really wanted to do a really good job with it. Now, though this is an image of Jesus, some of my subscribers might remember that I made a video titled Making a Birthday Present. I made it about a year ago explaining that I'm an atheist, and in that video I also detailed some of what my values are in contrast to my Mormon upbringing. And generally I think it's clear to see that I haven't really ventured too far off the beaten path, because I feel that the beaten path has some virtues in it. And since I live in a really religious town, this is a request that comes up from time to time.
Can you please draw a picture of Jesus?
But for me, being a well-researched atheist, and by that I mean people,
mainly family,
wouldn't stop trying to spread the good news until I knew everything that there was to know about the topic as it concerns religious, Christian, and Mormon mentality, and an atheistic one. I don't usually feel compelled to draw Jesus unless I'm actually paid to do it. In fact, actually, I think that most people who wind up drawing or painting Jesus do it for the money. It's not like they hand out these pictures for free. Generally, I would like to share some of my thoughts that I had when drawing this image. I think that this image is a good way to portray what multiculturalism actually is. Multiculturalism has become this big buzzword ever since the Obama administration, and most of the time I feel like Inigo Montoya from Princess Bride, because I feel compelled to say, I do not think that word means what you think it means. When I think of someone who's multicultural, I don't think of some sort of behavior that's full of exclusivity. That's just not something that factors into it. And generally I find the behavior of people touting multiculturalism as a mantra are
inconceivably
hypocritical. Though I no longer participate in a cultural narrative, or even if I never participated in it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be shunned, and it doesn't really matter how many people participate in it, be it a huge number of the populace or not. What matters is the values of that culture. Do the values hold merit? I mean, if a culture has devolved into senseless debauchery, if its effect gets people to promote hate and generally gets people to wind up feeling rage all the time, and if that culture fosters an environment where everyone needs to agree with you, otherwise they're a terrible person, then maybe that's not a culture or a narrative that you should be participating in. Even when it's a culture or narrative that touts things like exclusivity and multiculturalism as their mantras. Maybe they've just redefined what those words mean, and maybe the dictionary doesn't agree with them, and maybe the dictionary is right. I tend to disrespect cultures and narratives and behaviors that are riddled with catch-22s and all manner of logical fallacies to justify being a jerk. In the year 2020, it seems like if someone wants to show how kind and understanding they are, all they need to be is a giant asshole, or tear down our history, or resort to something that resembles terrorism. And I don't really understand that very much. In fact, I don't understand that at all. Do you have any idea how multicultural America is already by default, without having a bunch of crazy kids running around preaching to everyone about a better way of life to those that already know better? Currently, there are places in the world where a Christian would never ask an atheist to draw a picture of Jesus. Doing so would get people to think that the image is a desecration in some way. And in those corners of the world, if the atheist were to actually draw that picture of Jesus, that artist would be arrested and would be lucky to only get their hands chopped off. During the war in Iraq, I recall an artist that made a political cartoon with an illustration of Muhammad, and the outrage that was directed towards the artist. They were calling for the artist's death. I think I might understand where they're coming from, at least to some small degree, in that they might feel disrespected, or that depictions of Muhammad, be it an illustration or a statue, could foster an environment of idol worship. But calling for a person's death over a drawing is more than just extreme, it just seems kind of stupid to me. There's a lot of rage out there in the world today, and when drawing this image, it got me to look over some of my favorite quotes that the New Testament attributes to Jesus and how they relate to the world today. It just kind of got me thinking a little bit. Mark 8:36.
For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the world and lose his own soul?
I really feel that verse is relevant today because as these kids run around having mass temper tantrums and rob stores to illustrate a better code of conduct in some sort of way, as they try to abolish our Independence Day, what good is it to get exactly what you want if you lose who you are along the way? In American culture right now, everyone seems to be making it out to sound as if identity revolves around sex, sexuality, and such like that. I think identity is much more in depth than that. You are a collection of your memories, a series of learned experiences and skills. You are a philosophy. You are the morals and ethics that you value. You are the expectations you place on yourself. You are your goals to meet the expectations that have been placed on you by those that are worth working hard for. If you were uprooted from your home and forced to leave town, your whole identity would be robbed from you. Where you eat, sleep, work, and who you associate with would be gone. And to me, sex and sexuality would be on the bottom of the list of things that you are. The next verse that comes to mind is Mark 8:36.
For whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted.
It's become a really popular trend to virtue signal in the world today, and although it's fine to bring up accomplishments or values that you happen to hold from time to time, it eventually becomes nauseating to constantly see someone worshipping their own reflection. And it's not a microaggression to be nauseated and dry heaving at that sort of thing. It's a horrible character trait to just worship everything that you do. I don't think there's many people who respect a man or woman that runs around telling everyone just how great they are all the time. The next verse that comes to mind is Romans 13:9.
For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in saying this, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself.
I think that valuing monogamy is a perfect illustration of devotion, letting the significant other know that no matter how bad things get, no matter how old and frail we are, you're saying, I will be there for you, and I'll have the time for you. And you'll be proving it throughout the entire marriage, throughout all the abundance of sickness and the health. I think it's obvious why murder is a bad thing. I don't think I need to really explain it. I think bearing false witness has taken root in America, in that words are being redefined and political correctness is an effort to keep people silent. Though it's true that words do evolve over time, they typically evolve naturally with the culture and not through a political motivated push to silence the majority. And by and large, to love your neighbor as much as you value your own life is no easy task. But it's one that I think that everyone can just jump on board with. And coveting is the biggest thing in the world today. It's a big problem, it seems. Instead of getting some functional shoes that you could wear every day, no, you want the most expensive ones. You don't just need a car, you need that Lamborghini. Oh, your next door neighbor got a giant flat screen and VR goggles. Time to spend more money than you earned to get those things. None of that will make you happy. It really won't. Those are just things. And though it may just be a flat screen today, it'll be a boat tomorrow, and it'll be something else the next month, and then the next month, and then the next. It's constantly never ending. We fall into this hype of how wonderful life will be when this or that movie or video game comes out. But think of how many times you've felt that way, and have those great things become true stepping stones towards a lasting happiness? Or is it just that when you get those things, you then turn to the next thing to get excited about? I don't think excitement and looking forward to things are a bad thing, but basing all of your happiness on what's yet to come rather than choosing to see the merit in whatever situation you're in right now and choosing to be happy with it in whatever way that you can is the most rewarding gift that you can give yourself. The next verse that comes to mind is Matthew 5:39.
But I say unto you that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also.
Matthew 7:12.
Therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. For this is the law of the prophets.
I think that this guiding principle of turning the other cheek and the golden rule is the reason why there hasn't been much vocal opposition to the cultural struggle in America right now. But should an Orwellian nightmare form out of the ashes of what's happening right now, right in front of our faces, I think that it will be a torment that will never end. Matthew 5 verses 29 through 30.
And if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out, and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off, and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that the whole body should be cast into hell.
Now, of course, I don't think that this passage should be taken literally at all, but it's basically saying that if you find some reoccurring problem in your character or in your environment, correct yourself as drastically as you can, or remove yourself from that environment as fast as you can. Because in the long run, the benefits of these sorts of corrections are better than sitting stagnant and facing the consequences. And the consequences don't necessarily, at least in my opinion, they don't necessarily have to be a vision of fire and brimstone, but they can be consequences founded in life. Though there are people inside of Christian and Mormon circles that are definitely flawed, I don't feel as though the actual doctrine of Mormonism and Christianity actually promote debauchery or hate. I really don't think that they promote those things. It's quite the opposite, really. I mean, the Old Testament is more than just completely screwed up, but the New Testament tones it down quite a bit. But I do have a ton of mixed feelings towards Mormonism. Some of the reason for that is because I'm the only person in my family that's not devotedly religious. The first 19 years of my life were living as a worthy Mormon, which really isn't easy. And I'd argue it's a code of conduct that fosters a behavior and a mental conditioning that is actually contrary to a healthy development of a child when growing up. Not because it's evil or anything, but because you'll be the only one. And because there's oaths and covenants that you make in Mormonism that most people conveniently forget. And when you set about to be a worthy Mormon and you don't cherry pick which oaths and covenants you'll follow, you'll just wind up all alone in the world, instead of getting all of these blessings and rewards everyone constantly promises ad nauseum in church. To be honest, I think that Mormonism gets people to hold themselves accountable, to have a level head, and actually prescribes a code of conduct that is full of virtue. And it's not just a list of beliefs, it's a full-on code of conduct. Gordon B. Hinckley, the Mormon prophet that I had when growing up, wrote a book called Way to Be. It's a really good book, and it details the code of conduct rather well. I find it odd that Mormons believe in modern revelation, and yet one of their prophets wrote a book right then and there, I think it was in the 1990s or the early 2000s, and no one knows what's in it. I mean, back in the olden times, they would call that modern scripture, but what the hell? I just don't think anyone inside of Mormonism necessarily lives by that. It just gets me to wonder, what is a Mormon when Mormons don't believe what Mormons believe? What is a Mormon when Mormons don't live as Mormons live? It's a question that's never been answered, and I don't think it ever will be. I don't think it can be answered because they don't realize that they've cherry-picked one oath and one covenant over another, even when they're told point blank using LDS.org as a source, which has the standard works. Basically, that's the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Book of Mormon, Pearl of Great Price, and the Doctrine and Covenants, as well as a huge repository of other information and tools inside of it. It's possibly one of the most in-depth and elaborate websites I've ever seen. Again, it's LDS.org. So, yeah, there's mixed feelings with regards to me and Mormonism. I found that the only way for me to have some form of stability in my life and psychological well-being is when I wind up living a life that's without strict adherence to a religion. Personally, I'm rather fond of Buddhism, and I'm rather fond of Mormonism, and of course Christianity as well, in that Christianity also has some of what I like in Mormonism with it. There's tons of interesting, uplifting things to find in there, even if none of it were true. Emphasis on the word if. I'd like to point out that you don't necessarily have to agree with my atheistic viewpoint. We can agree to disagree and see the merit in our fellow man and love our neighbor. There's profoundly interesting insights inside of the Bible, the standard works, and in many different cultures and religions that don't involve the supernatural or weird miraculous things happening. Stated differently, even if none of the religions on the earth are true, even if, there's life lessons to be learned in these ancient books and traditions and cultures. And you don't have to prescribe to every weird idea in order to appreciate it and benefit from it. And so I really set out to make something special for this client that's near and dear to me. I don't know if you, the viewer, are religious or not, but if you're a Christian or a Mormon, I hope that you can look at this image and feel what I was going for with it. So the final image is coming up onto the screen right now, and I shared this image with my dad, and he said,
I've seen images of the Savior with children before, but I've never seen the Savior depicted as interacting with children like that. And it creates a wonderful feeling inside.
And that was what I was going for. Hopefully this image does the same thing for you. And in closing, I'd like to just kind of say, really quick here, that I am so glad that I live in a culture and a society,
America,
where I'm able to have the freedom of speech and the freedom of religion, both the freedom to believe in religion and to just not believe in religion, or just to kind of participate with whatever type of culture that I might happen to appreciate. I am so glad that I live in a country where I am free to vocally voice what I think. I am so grateful that I am able to have an interaction with a Christian as an atheist, where I'm able to produce an image where they're able to cherish it in a way that most images can't be cherished. It's taken a long time for America to reach this point. It hasn't always been as wonderful as it is right now. Tears at my soul and in the fabric of who I feel I am is basically what I'm saying when I refer to as soul. It tears at me when I think about making a video like this, and I question, can I make a video like that in America these days? Why would I ever need to ask that question? This is America. We have the freedom of speech and the freedom of thought, the freedom of belief, of religion. There is no such thing as a thought crime. There is no such thing as a crime non-crime, which was something that was in England at some point in time recently. I'm just so glad that I live in a country where everyone of any belief, any lifestyle can live however they want, as long as it doesn't infringe or hamper anyone else's freedom to do the exact same thing. I'm so glad that I live in America. And even though I have some hang-ups, I'm so glad that I grew up the way that I did. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys would like to participate with my community, feel free to join my Discord server. A link to my Discord is in the video description below. If you'd like to support this channel, there's an image of my mascot in the upper right corner of the screen. It leads to my Patreon. Any support would be much appreciated. And if you've enjoyed this content and would like to see more, feel free to click on anything else that's appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.